Hauser. He's building automobiles for the future. He's putting all kinds of compartments in them. He's making them ergonomically stimulating. Hauser. He's the man with a plan. Hello, this is Hauser. I'm your host, Mike Hauser. Thank you for joining me. This one might get a little weird or a little excessively unweird. I haven't really prepared much for this show. I've been eating a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches lately. And just kind of wandering the streets a lot, looking in storefronts and reading flyers, basically reading flyers, walking the streets, eating peanut butter and jelly. I was riding the bus and I found some, it was actually a bag from Topper's Pizza on KK in Bayview, and in this bag there were some packets of crushed red pepper, the kind that people often put on their pizza, and I decided to save them. So I put them in my Milwaukee Public Library bag, and I took a couple out and I showed them to a person I know named of Carrie, and I said, I kind of sort of found these on the bus, is this gross? And she said, yes, that's disgusting. You can't have those, they're covered in bacteria. And I think she might have even taken one, but I didn't give up every crushed red pepper packet. I took a few home with me, and I've since used them a couple times on pizza. I've often been in the habit of stopping by the Quick Pick about a block from my house, and I like to buy Palermo's pizza. They have like several they have several different kinds. But I've been participating in the boycott of Palermo's Pizza because a number of the people who work for Palermo's Pizza are on strike. But it's tough because it's really the only option at the Quick Pick. My favorite kind of frozen pizza is Connie's frozen pizza. I have to go to Outpost to get that. Outpost Natural Foods on KK. Who wouldn't, know where that is? I mean, somebody who doesn't live in Milwaukee wouldn't know where that is. I was reading today on the internet about this comedian Daniel Tosh. He did a bit at the Laugh Factory, a comedy club in Los Angeles, and he had a bit, I guess you could call it that, about how rape jokes are always funny. And a woman in the audience vocalized her extreme disagreement with the idea that rape jokes are funny. She vocalized that she didn't find them funny, and he said, wouldn't it be funny if 5 guys came in and raped her? Wow, yeah, that's really messed up. There's a piece that I'm supposed to read that's a compulsory like part of the program, which I'm going to read before I get any further. This piece is called Disclaimer. Welcome to Hauser. My name is Mike Hauser, and I'm the producer of this show. The things you will hear over the next length of show represent the views of Hauser and the people making them. All opinions and quotations in no way represent River West Radio. I hope I don't have to read the whole thing over again now. And are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues arising from the content of this program. I find the phrase, any legal issues arising from the content of this program, to be very fragrant, actually. I think of a kind of, if not idyllic, then cliched scene of a woman. Why a woman, anyway? A person who had baked an apple pie and carries it over to a window and sets it on the windowsill. And of course, in the reality that most people, or many people, are nostalgic for, that never existed, you never close your windows. Windows don't have screens on them. And so she puts the pie, I think this is from the Andy Griffith Show. The pie is in the windowsill and it's cooling. And there's a fragrance arising from this pie, from the content of this pie, if you will. And yeah, I think there's an episode of the Andy Griffith Show where there's some kind of a criminal. I think it's Ernest T. Bass. There was a kind of wrangly, kind of, you could see the body odor coming off of him, kind of like rascally criminal named Ernest T. Bass, who was very sort of comedically exaggerated caricature of a like a illiterate redneck, and he was stealing pies, and I think that's how they knew he was back in town. He was stealing pies off windowsills. And I would imagine that there was a disclaimer somewhere of the producers of the Andy Griffith Show making an effort that was toward the end of disclaiming them from any responsibility for anything Ernest T. Bass had done, would do, or had encouraged others to do, because the power of suggestibility is very strong in these kinds of idyllic television kind of memories that exist in our collective psyche. So back to Daniel Tosh. I find this whole thing interesting. I think it should be taken as an opportunity to talk about rape culture, which I think is very pervasive, and I think the number of times it comes up in stand-up comedy routines is itself proof of how pervasive it is, because I mean, I really think stand-up comedy is kind of where a lot of the really most messed up elements of the collective psyche kind of show themselves. And I think, well, I saw this movie recently called Heckler, and the thing is, to a comedian, if you heckle them, you are like, to them at that moment, I get the impression that you are like the lowest of the low. You are like kind of scum, because you're interfering in their livelihood, and it seems to be more prevalent now than it once was that everyone should know you don't heckle, and if you do heckle, you deserve whatever happens to you or whatever is said to you. But I mean, comedians are also human beings, and they should have an awareness of the fact that when they say the word rape, it registers differently and many times much more strongly for a woman to whom it is more of an imminent threat than to a man. It's just different for someone who has the experience of being a man in the world to talk about rape than it is for someone who has the experience of being a woman in the world to talk about rape. So I mean, in a way, I really can't blame this person for vocalizing their extreme discontent. But I don't think rape should be banned from being discussed or like talked about in comedy. I think it should absolutely be in public discourse, and comedy is, I think, an important part of public discourse. And so I think it's kind of it attests to the level of a comedian's skill, how they handle a subject like that, which is a delicate subject. And I think Daniel Tosh, by simply, after being heckled for saying all rape jokes are funny, by just responding, wouldn't it be funny if like 5 guys came in and raped her? Well, what would have been funnier is it would have had more humorous potential, because it would be more ironic if 5 guys came in and raped Daniel Tosh, as he was talking about how all rape jokes are funny. But I can see where people are coming from, who talk about rape is not funny, but rape jokes can be funny. I can see where they're coming from, because a joke is just I mean, it's kind of like a literary form, and rape is handled in a variety of literary forms, and comedy comes from a place of a lot of pain and humiliation. But I think if you're going to navigate those waters, you have a responsibility to be sensitive in some way of how a large portion of your audience might react to hearing those things. But I'm kind of feeling right now like I'd like to segue into something else. Okay, let's see. What did I talk about? Peanut butter and jelly, wandering the streets, Daniel Tosh, rape. The only time I ever had RC Cola, it gave me a rash. I was at Fuel Cafe, which is where I was only 2 hours ago, and they didn't have any Coke, which is normally what I would buy. So I bought RC Cola. I gave it a chance, and I had a rash all over my calves the next day. And I probably had the thought like I was dicing vegetables, and I probably had the thought like, can I transmit this rash through diced vegetables? While I was working as a dishwasher and prep cook, I had a like weird kind of reverse germophobia that like really took hold in me. I didn't even want to prepare food for people because I was so afraid that they would get sick. I remember a particular night when there was an event, some kind of an awards dinner, and I thought that my step-grandmother was there, and I suddenly got this strange urge that I had to warn her about eating the food because my boss had the flu and had prepared most of the food. So I don't know, what do you say when someone you know has the flu is serving food to someone else? I wanted to talk about, I have this fantasy when I walk around that there could be a poetry reading in all kinds of, just anywhere where there's an empty space, there could be a poetry reading. And a friend of mine had a really great idea to have a poetry reading in an alley, not even an alley, just a sliver of an alley between Woodland Pattern and the building next to it. And I thought that would be really funny because if there was an audience, they would have to watch it single file. And just filling spaces with people, like having parking garage performances. Yeah, I mean, what if we did that? There's a book called Ambient Parking Lot by a writer named Pamela Liu, and she read within the past few months at Woodland Pattern. And Ambient Parking Lot is sort of a novel that's about a group of musicians who record and play the oral ambiance of parking garages and make music from it. And it's a book that I've read part of. I haven't finished it yet. But it would be just as easy, I think, to have guerrilla poetry performances, guerrilla poetry readings. I've always been interested in doing that. There are a lot of logistical problems. For one thing, how would you teach a gorilla to read? And I mean, how could you teach a gorilla to, say, read Wallace Stevens with real feeling? How would you teach a gorilla to do, you know, maybe Wallace Stevens would be too, I don't know, metaphysical for the gorilla. Maybe start the gorilla off with, like, I don't know, Robert Frost or E.E. Cummings. I don't know. If you have any suggestions, text me with it. My number is 414-610-0608. Even if you're listening on the podcast, on the archived version, which is really what I think about this more as kind of archived podcast that happens to stream live once a week. Text me any suggestions you might have for that, or for poetry that a gorilla might enjoy. I was just really distracted by a woman's cleavage out the window. God damn it. I am a massively conflicted person, folks. I am, like Lil Caesar's, I'm hot and ready. And I'm just looking for an outlet. I'm looking for an outlet through which to transmit my special gift. What that special gift might be can only be seen from a parallax view. It can only be seen by looking to the right or the left of it. This is the kind of night vision that the Marines learn to utilize. It's the kind of night vision that you will learn to utilize if you register for my 3-day seminar on parallax initiative called Furtive Eyes with Mike Hauser. In this seminar, I will teach you how to tame your appetites and reroute them into some really innovative omelet making. Hey, Sleepy G. And I don't want to spoil the surprise. Okay, I am going to spoil the surprise. Kanye West and Kim Kardashian have agreed to appear on day 2 of the seminar. And they're going to be part of a round table on fertility and capitalism. No, that's dumb. with George Will and Mario Batali. Mario Batali, I know you're listening. You owe me $45. You know it. I know it. I could really use it right now, is all I'm saying. I'm going to read something to you by the poet Kevin Davies. This is from a book called The Golden Age of Paraphernalia. It came out from Edge Books, which publishes a lot of my favorite books. And Edge is published by Rod Smith, who was my guest about a month and 7 days ago, I think. The structure of the book is interesting. There are 3 kind of nested sequences, which means that they're kind of notated by signs and kind of are interrupted by each other, but there are 2 long pieces. And I'm going to read one of those long pieces. And I was thinking that I would really like to read it with some dramatic flair. This is called Lateral Argument. It starts with a quote from Paul Williams. Persons exist as practical ways of speaking about bundles. They awoke in a bookless world studded with lean-to performance artists interacting with electricity. This must be the place. Evicted from elsewhere, here at last, not rest but an apprenticeship in container technology, a kind of music that, though apparently stopping, more specifically, never ends, thus displaying as virtue its greatest flaw, successfully, irritatingly. Who here has access to liquor? The youth of this centerless void gave voice to the sensual trepidations of the nearby chopping block. This transparency at once a local pride and a fulcrum of alertness. Yes. They then proceeded lengthwise down the post-racial boulevard, exhausted but coy, travel plans successfully forgotten. Perhaps they would stay a while, but no. What's that humming sound? Hello? The so-called outside strangers, buckets, the new-fangled window panes across the street, emptied into deltas of greeting. The burnt marshmallow stuck to your cheek, a weak rhyme, a new genre of pottery, bolt upright in the midst of a daydream, so that we all might be blessed with the darker gifts of broken car, tank top, a castle full of waterlogged documents. Let us now return to the German language. Little hills of cocaine on a plain, the still point on fire and twirling. The circulation of air in commercial spaces is a skill. The circulation of air in domestic spaces. Plants need water, that's all. A sunny ledge. Not this. What this then? The stems must be crushed or the flowers will wilt, thought Tito, dreaming of access to the Albanian shore, the completed works of Elodie Loughton. We could build an entire civilization, but that would be a mistake. It is impossible to make a mistake. Ask Palestine. Ask Palestrina. Ask dead Buddha stinking up the bicycle shop. At the age of 2, I attained my cat, and then she was gone. Lesson. Water has become an issue. Alpine meadowlands goodbye. All that money spent on oceanfront mansions. The trimming of municipal welfare trees ongoing. Liability. The papier-mâché Potemkin village we've spreadable cheese over the surface of what we call Earth. There's a space, you fill it, but it's not you. You're not it either. In fact, you're not you. Early computer music struggling to be heard, smothered by an updraft. Incense smoke drifting is a trombone player pretending to have a weekend gig. This is our heritage. Little bits of burnt paper float over Brooklyn. The number of dust mites in an average blue blanket that has not been washed in 5 years. Why haven't you written? It seems so easy to have written, to have dropped a line in the ink-dark pond. Great piles of fish for sale in bistros. Bales of arugula. Ragout of heirloom vegetation. The acoustics of St. Agnes, the overtone series. People sitting up and remembering it's time to do something nice for companion animals. Not a gram of it would I swallow as tonic. Listening for the distant hum of bombers. Unaccented English means you talk like me. To Albany by Deer Trail. Abrupt prison glinting in last light. The phone should cut it out now. I'm not home. Church bell 1 minute late. The smell of laundry in the bag too long. A drop of slightly sulfurous water. Throwing up, landing, taking naps. Thought balloon above Boonwell's head. Under 5 minutes. Rock over 5 minutes. Classical. Down, down deep in the under subway. This also holds true for at-bats. I can't work today because I am crazy with desire to stay inside and listen to the opera of 4 centuries. A person you knew in camp once on an island, walking up to you in a dream asking to borrow money for furniture. Hold me tighter or I cannot stay. I will sing in Italian till my needs are met. By the animals that hover round me, in the common toilet of Arezzo in Summit, New Jersey, teaching basketball to middle school girls in a rapidly shifting ecosystem bereft of grasses in an anonymous industrial park, buried about 8 feet deep inside a Malaspina oyster being flown to Chicago, in the flickering timescape of an estuarial mantra, in one ear and out the aorta, in time for dinner, but late for epistemological theory hope. Infrared octopus art dial. In my opinion, standing on head before bright light, in lieu of flowers, ritual urination, in what we call public spaces. The ancient odor of Hibernians, moving from panel to panel, noting elements of the collage, several people wearing hats inside the unframed repression of woodworking used sexually. Just because you thought it or wrote it down or printed it and had it distributed via whatever networks of strategic allegiance, I'm sorry, that should be strategic alliance, doesn't mean America won the War of 1812. White House in flames, first stirrings of Canadian patriotism among UEL scoundrels, king lickers, lovers of cold, hard, stupid life, abundant fur-bearing rodents. Who cares for any of this? Sediment of legend and angle brackets, ignoring the box scores, the ballooning ERAs of once promising youngsters from Louisiana and rural California, intact despite splitting, postulating and unconscious on the basis of boat slips, academic, having drawers. Insight into the rampage, the great privatization scam, indentured workers making bricks, ages 30 to over 70. Animal lure, leg hold loan policy, ramps are of the Lilly clan. Related, you can choose your friends arbitrarily, like family photos bought in junk shop. Let's bury radioactive garbage in the desert for several thousand years, or shoot it at the moon and Mars along with bacteria. See what happens. Suppressed memory. We have all survived crash landings, wandered here and invented plausible pasts. Every so often one of us will slip up. That's why we have police, booze, regional art museums, French-Canadian acrobats, all too plausible breakdowns, and suburban shooting sprees. Bang bang, I remember you as a radio host of my youth. Now you are old, in fact, dead in a suit, and want something even death can't kill, craving. If we knew the formula, we could make our own, cut down on Mexican road trips, just sit around talking all day, wandering, renaming the parks, eating bark off trees, nights by the canal, shivering, hanging with Gus outside the necropolis, an exurb of post-musical attention, the remainders of that dream, the Parch archives, into existence, a cave wall being chipped at, generation to generation, not many benches, too few water closets, lots of signs, hand in hand, meandering loiterers, vagrant kitchen veterans saving up for tonight, fat pigeon that can't retire, neurotic Yonkers geese. Yesterday, I stayed in out of the heat, washed dishes, read a book, remembered a cow, that as an ignorant boy with a boat I walloped for breaking into our yard, eyes first puzzled, then pissed off, bellowing near my asparagus patch. Or that was later, after the big cedar fell and destroyed the fence, or possibly when we mutinied, refusing to follow Alexander farther into the subcontinent, just wanting to go back to whatever inevitably temporary homes with the baubles we'd collected, our blistered skins. Eat an entire sheep with a group of cousins, maybe build a hut, imperceptibly alter a grammar, chase birds, stand in the midst of barley. Centuries later, brand new feudal nightmare, dribs. I loved a girl, the girl loved me. They chopped us up by the thuggish sea, and on like that. The weather is something you notice, anecdotes from random travel. Who tried to kill whom, over what disputed bottle? How art ruined Europe, how ruins programmed mutations, until suddenly the internet breathed new life into corrupt housing councils. Spider silk in the milk of goats with fond names in Quebec. Settled into a decent life of waiting to be allowed to breed. Sentimental calculus, 5 times harder than steel. Deciding who shall have access to the research library, itself a front, cockfights out back. The clerks groan in vats near Johns Hopkins, a tectonic sense of the ends of banter, dovetailing nicely with the new national security apparatus, your beloved on the lawn, as seen from space. What we've learned from film, that figure in the distance portends catastrophe. In a day or two, this will not be over. Monstrosities arise from steam, a heart of pure murder, absolutely trudging barren scenarios. Ledges of the pockmarked earth give way to fog psychosis, a ringing phone inside a solid crystal tube, eager to fall in love, to retreat to the car barn, the amusements out of control, a supper ready for the consequences of a moth in New Zealand, rustling the ear hair of Franco triumphant in Madrid, letting loose the vampire priests, the werewolf nuns of Central Europe, India, coming to the end of a dirt road in a fevered dream, As you stare, the vegetation thins. The vegetation thins to reveal a copper-bound book of secret photographs, within which, looking closer, the vulnerable napes of doomed soldiers and luckless non-combatants have written upon the doggerel of porters. Life in the pressurized capsule becomes intolerable. Weeks, days, hours, seconds just staring at the back of your hand and the carefully printed instructions in 12 languages, none of which you can read since the stroke. What we need is a hoop of sorts, and a round, ballish thing to propel through it, and a will to think otherwise. A long history of drainage. One could go on. One waits for permission to go on, and in the meantime busies oneself with the most basic sort of domestic tasks, digging an ancient cigarette butt from behind the radiator, washing one cherished dish, passing a t-shirt over the dusty surface of the clock radio. But all collapses before one's bloodshot eye, the load-bearing walls composed of particles that prefer not to, who strike against the conditions, who saw nothing and ain't talkin', refuse even to sweep themselves up. Wait, last Tuesday? One is in need of more correct data, readings, graphs, portents, illusions, vanities. The line for charity groceries starts here. So deeply in debt. You're totally in the clear and can once again endure the budding of trees, the groans of living rock, the cross-eyed allure of prison guards, so totally in hock to sub-agents of the Imperium, they can kiss your polished green ass. Lightning strikes bath water, midsummer hail. Tentacles of the cactus grow toward the trees outside, seek counsel. Every bit of Brooklyn bent double over hydrants, trying to get comfortable in the heat of this duck blind. Lightning strikes cactus in the dry flats beyond someone's town. The work just never ends. First, there's the obvious problem with the rug, then all these papers close to toppling, and the gentle turning of the mind away from thoughts of political assassination. And then, not finally, this whole matter of Dempster's Cistern Chapel. You might be familiar with the old atlas I'm shaking in your face to keep both of us cool. You might have a gift for rough stuff and vacant lots. For now, though, just wear the beanie. There isn't any way to decide for sure, and it's childish to keep trying. Lightning strikes the baby otter, and we clutch each other in fear and grief. The cacti rise in triumph and invent democracy in those eager flats. We're long gone, and it's a pleasure to meet us. That is not the end of that poem, but I decided to commit the hopefully just venal sin of cutting it short, because I want to read two more pieces. I want to read this thing by William Carlos Williams from his long poem called Spring and All. And the passage I'm about to read starts out kind of taken out of context. The beginning is gonna sound weird, but this is from Spring and All, which is a long poem William Carlos Williams wrote, I think in like 1932. I think that's when it was published anyway. And it's just amazingly important. Poets since then have periodically forgotten and remembered the importance of this text. Here's a little bit from it. Or better, prose has to do with the fact of an emotion. Poetry has to do with the dynamization of emotion into a separate form. This is the force of imagination. Prose, statement of facts concerning emotions, intellectual states, data of all sorts, technical expositions, jargon of all sorts, fictional and other. Poetry, new form, dealt with as a reality in itself. The form of prose is the accuracy of its subject matter, how best to expose the multiform phases of its material. The form of poetry is related to the movements of imagination revealed in words, or whatever it may be. The cleavage is complete. Why should I go further than I am able? Is it not enough for you that I am perfect? The cleavage goes through all the phases of experience. It is the jump from prose to the process of imagination that is the next great leap of the intelligence, from the simulations of present experiences to the facts of the imagination. The greatest characteristic of the present age is that it is stale, stale as literature. To enter a new world and have their freedom of movement and newness. I mean that there will always be prose painting, representative work, clever as may be revealing in new phases of emotional research presented on the surface. But the jump from that to Cézanne or back to certain of the primitives is the impossible. The primitives are not back in some remote age. They are not behind experience. Work which bridges the gap between the rigidities of vulgar experience and the imagination is rare. It is new, immediate. It is so because it is actual, always real. It is experience dynamized into reality. Time does not remove. Only ignorance and stupidity move. Intelligence, force, power, stands still with time and forces change about itself. Sifting the world for permanence in the drift of non-entity. Pio Baroja interested me once. Baroja, leaving the medical profession, some not important inspector's work in the north of Spain, opened a bakery in Madrid. The isolation he speaks of as a member of the so-called intellectual class influenced him to abandon his position and engage himself as far as possible in the intricacies of the design patterned by the social class. He sees no interest in isolation. These gestures are the effort for self-preservation or the preservation of some quality held in high esteem. Here it seems to be that a man starved in imagination changes his milieu so that his food may be richer. The social class, without the power of expression, lives upon imaginative values. I mean, only to emphasize the split that goes down through the abstractions of art to the everyday exercises of the most primitive types. There is a sharp division, the energizing force of imagination on the one side, and the acquisitive, progressive force of the lump on the other. The social class, with its religion, its faith, sincerity, and all the other imaginative values, is positive, yes. The merchant, hibernating, unmagnetized, tends to drop away into the isolate, inactive particles. Religion is continued then as a form, art as a convention. To the social energized class, ebullient now in Russia, the particles adhere because of the force of the imagination energizing them. Anyhow, the change of Baroja interested me. Among artists, or as they are sometimes called, men of imagination, creators, etc., this force is recognized in a pure state. All this can be used to show the relationships between genius, hand labor, religion, etc., and the lack of feeling between artists and the middle class type. The jump between fact and the imaginative reality. The study of all human activity is the delineation of the essence and ebb of this force, shifting from class to class and location to location. Rhythm. The waved rhythm of Shakespeare, watching clowns and kings sliding into nothing. I'm about to sign off in just a few minutes. And I want to reiterate that any pleasant aroma or sudden lust-inducing whiff of pheromones coming from Hauser is coming from me, Mike Hauser, and not from River West Radio. I want to read two pieces by Allie Warren. Allie Warren is an actual living poet, as is Kevin Davies. William Carlos Williams passed some time ago, sometime in the 50s. Allie Warren lives in Oakland. She's a fantastic poet, and I understand... Oh, maybe I'm not supposed to say anything. I think she will have a full-length book coming out next year sometime. I think. She has several chapbooks out. Most recently, she had poems appear in Lana Turner, which if you just Google Lana Turner magazine, I think if you Google Lana Turner, a Journal of the Arts, it'll come up. And Allie Warren has poems in there. And she recently, from Edition Louis Wayne, had the chapbook, I actually think this was in like 2010 maybe, or 2011, came out with Acting Out. This is from Acting Out. A few facts about the thorax. Oh, come, it's all over the faces of the wage earners, crossed out figures, and the seas and rivers, the occupied lands and the empty open lands, the sticky surface of everything, the pirates and the captains also. Oh, come, won't you believe in forgiveness? We must sit around in the sun and make sure love crossed out. We does not escape us. We must go to the coast alone. We must never go to the coast alone. It must be somewhere about. Try to see. If you can catch sight of it, tell me what it is. Often a part is impelled without the whole being impelled, pulped, fermented, and elaborated into lines. And the whole sequence of external things on the cheek of youth, plumb in the uprights, braised in the beams. Oh, come, won't you forgive me? One must never go to the country. If you are in the country, then I cannot lick your asshole. And everything that is throbbing and heaving and sopping will not throb and heave and sop. This poem is called Reification. Oh, baby. Baby, oh, baby, baby. Oh, baby. Baby, darling. My darling. Oh, baby. Come on, baby. Oh, yeah. Baby, I know. I know. And, oh, baby, yeah. Oh, baby, hey, baby. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on. Two poems from Acting Out by Allie Warren. My guest next week, I finally snagged him, is going to be Carl Saffron. And it is going to be a heated, I think, adversarial, I'm already trying to mentally and emotionally fortify myself for this. This is going to be like Batman sitting across from the Joker, and not the Jack Nicholson Joker, the Heath Ledger Joker, the scary one. I don't know which is which. I think the essences of those two characters. I'll ask Carl next week what he thinks. But I can't really say which is which. I'm not sure if I'm the good guy or the villain. But anyway, please text me any ideas you have for a great omelet at 414-610-0608, and I will feature it on next week's show. I promise. Okay. Take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. Good night and good eatins. That's terrible. All right, see you later.